Welcome back to What's on My Needles. And last week I showed you the very first steps of my current commission project. Well, this is how far it is now, but I'm going to show you how I worked this. So the original plan was to make it like the old baby booties that I had made and sold. And I quickly realized that that was not going to work. It just creates too many holes along the instep for it to be stuffed. So this is actually a modification of the adult booty pattern that is on the website now. But again, massive modifications to make it kind of teddy bear size. So I'm going to get started on the second one to show you how this has worked. So I will say, let me get these little ends out of the way, that it is worked from this edge up and then down to work the boot itself. And then I make the instep, then it's worked down, and then it's grafted along the bottom. And then the light tan is the little guy's legs or leggings, whatever you want to call them. It is not the skin or fur color for the critter. So let me get set up and I will be right back. So I have decided to switch to a dark blue background rather than my white background, just to see if this lends a better contrast, better way of being able to view these videos. So I have done the cuff. So I've done a seed stitch cuff, so it's just knit one, purl one all the way around. So what I'm going to end up doing now is separating out the stitches so I can knit in the round. Because the next stitch I need to do is the one all the way over here, and my yarn's all the way over here. So I'm sure most of you are used to doing this, but I'm literally just picking up one stitch at a time with a new double pointed needle. 7, 8. And then once I reach the correct number, I'm going to keep going on to the next needle. 5, 6, 7, 8. Now I'm not twisting these stitches as I go. I'm literally just slipping them from one to the next. Okay. So now it's time to start knitting in the round rather than back and forth. So literally I'm just knitting that very first stitch, giving it a little bit of an extra tug so that there's not too much of a gap, and working around. Now I'm going to be working around and around and around and around for a while, and then I'm going to be working the instep. But that is in fact the next little step, so I'm just going to work on this for a bit and I'll be right back. Please remember to like, follow, and subscribe to these social media platforms. Links will be provided in the description below. Okay, so I am to the point of the instep now, and I'm going to do most of this onto a separate needle. I actually will go through and rearrange all the rest of the stitches in a minute, but I want to show you how this part works. So there's going to be 10 stitches that are being worked, 8 from the original cuff, and then I will be making 2 stitches. As many of you have seen before, I prefer a lifted increase versus like a knit front and back or a make one. So I just go into the stitch below and then knit into it, and then I'm going to knit that stitch. And at this point I'm actually going to rearrange the stitches so I have a spare needle. But that's literally just so I have a spare needle. That's for no other reason. And then for this part, it's actually important that it's a slip edge because I'm going to be working into it later. But I'm purling across. Then I'm going to put that needle down and continue to work across. So I've got those 5, 1, 2, 3, and then to do a lifted increase from the back, it's actually picking up the purl bump and then purling into it. I purl the last stitch. So then I'm going to use the needle that I removed to work back and forth on these stitches for the correct number of rows. So again, slipping the first stitch and knitting across, and then I'll slip and purl across. And I'll keep going for a while like that. When I'm making the adult size slippers, this is how the length of the foot is determined. And even with the baby size booties, that's how it's determined. But that is, since this is a stuffed animal, while it is how it's being determined, there's a little less precision involved because I'm not going for an actual, measurement. So I'm not trying for like a women's size 8 or a baby's size foot. I'm just trying to make it look like it's a foot rather than the end of a tube. So once I get to the end, I'm actually going to decrease those added stitches in, and I'll do it 1 stitch in just so that I'm not dealing with the extra stitch. That extra stitch is actually underneath this new line of stitching here, but I will be back when it's time to pick up the last little bit of stitches. So give me just a minute. So here I am at the second part of the picking up stitches for the instep. And yeah, I know there's too many needles again, so it's going to be a little hard to see. But I've slipped underneath both legs of that stitch, and I'm just going to pull up a stitch, trying really hard not to split any of the yarn in the process. Same thing with that one, and that one, and the last stitch. And again, rearranging stitches a little bit. So at this point, I need to go through, get everything all rearranged and happy. I'm going to do a couple of rounds where I'm working straight, and then I'll be decreasing a couple times before I graft the bottom using Kitchener stitch. So these are all skills that I have shown before on other videos, so I'm not going to bore you all with them. Next time I'm going to show how I connect the two legs. So you know, something that's not going to be on screen is how I picked up the stitches here. So this is a lot like picking up stitches from purl bumps that I've shown again before. It's just that this is on the first round of purl bumps for the boot. And it was just pick up starting at the center front and worked around. I worked around and around and around for 12 rounds, increasing a couple stitches so I have some extra stitches to sew together for the little critter's crotch. So I will be back next time for what's on my needles, and see you next week. If you would like to help fund this page, please find me on Patreon at Theatrical Crafts.